Okay, so on to keyframe pose number 5. Let's go for the stretch just before we hit the ground. So I will grab all these keys. I'm just going to put it into linear so it will give us an idea of where it might be, which obviously is nowhere near right because our landing is much later. So I'm going to ignore that completely and we're just going to do it by eye. Okay, so grab the feet, grab the hands, grab the body, shift forward a bit and then drop down. And then key just so we make a record of where that is, frame 64. Now what we need to happen is for our feet to be in the same position as when they land. So to do that, I'm going to select both our feet. I'm going to go to the last frame, which is the position I want them to be in, and then I will middle mouse on frame 64 and just hit S, and it will copy frame 90 to frame 64. And you can do this any way you like. I can middle mouse over here, and they will jump to that position. It's just a quick way of copying and pasting. Select your key, middle click where you want to paste it, and key. So now I know that my feet are in the right position. I can adjust my body and hands accordingly and just move those forward. And I want to take some of this toe roll out because there is some there. There is some contact already, but not as much as we have. We need some here in this foot. And I need to move the hips. And let's remove that rotation actually on the hips, just so I'm starting a bit cleaner and not getting confused with what it's given me. So I want to bring that just over, just so I can start to get a straight leg. I might adjust these feet actually because I think, because I changed the pose slightly, I might need to adjust this stretch pose. Rotate the body forward a touch. Rotate around this way slightly. Let's remove the animation on the chest. Just bend that forward. Always looking back at that reference, just seeing how the body is behaving. Leaning back really. Head is, I'll just zero it out, but the head looking down to where we're going. I'm going to zero these shoulders. These hands, okay. So as the body is falling, the hands will rise to a certain extent. It's always this rise and fall, so the hips are leading and everything is following behind that a bit. So my shoulders are definitely raised in the reference. The arm is up here, the elbow is up. So let's also add that into it. Let's do a little bit of that on this arm, but not in the same position. There's a concept in animation known as twinning, which is when you have the left and right side of your left and right arms, or it might be left and right side of your face, or your left and right legs, and you have them in the same position, and it just leads to stiff and uninteresting looking poses. So always look to vary the position of the opposing sides of the body. Let's just rotate that chest over a bit, and again we're going to twist it around to camera slightly. I just want to move this hand away from our guy's face. And I need to get actually more of the feeling of landing on tiptoes, but let's see how this is feeling if I just key between. It's not feeling great, I've got to be honest. I think I've probably pushed this a little bit too far forward. I'm not quite getting the feeling of crunch. Really because of the flow of where the hips are going, but this feels better because now I can see the arc is truer, the way the forces are travelling down, and I know that later on I can get a nice bounce in that. But I'm not happy with the feeling of this, so I'm going to move it back slightly. I want to actually, I'm going to zero these and just do it in the feet themselves. And we're just going to touch, zero those attributes. I'm just going to make sure that the toes just touch the ground. So we're just going to, this is one of the instances where I'm just going to exaggerate slightly from what's happening in reality. Lift that up. And again, I don't want them to look exactly the same as in the reference, although they are in very similar positions. They don't look quite as symmetrical as what I've currently got in my scene. So let's look for how we adjust that. So it's usually adding some twist and just changing the angle of things so that there we go. From our camera view, they do look slightly different. And how does that feel when we crunch down? So I think we get away with that. In motion, we'll know more later down the line, but for now I'm happy with how those feet transition from being off the ground to then being on the ground. Just going to lean our guy back slightly and just raise, just going for a little bit more of a stretch in that leg. I don't want it to feel too broken. So we're getting the meat of it in there now. So I can see we've got our initial pose, stretch, top of the arc, stretch, landing. Alright, cool. So I think that's looking pretty good. Let's leave it there and move on. So usual thing, grab the outliner, grab the selection set, right click, select set members, key everything, pressing S, and save as and version up.